let's go ahead and kick things off. I want to welcome everybody for joining us today. This is Mylio Coffee Break, and this is our very first episode. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a short tutorial in Mylio and go over just a little bit about how the date picker works and how you can change dates on images. And then I'm going to hand things over to my guest host, JC Figueroa. He is our customer success lead, and he's also an underwater photographer. And he's done a lot of work with his genealogy and scanning and family photos. And as we were just discussing with Fran before we got started, it's a project that requires a lot of research and digging into where some of these photos came from and how we can get them organized and preserve them. So let me share my screen and we will jump right in. Now, as I mentioned, this is a very conversational format. And if you have questions as we go through, please feel free to unmute and ask. I don't mind at all. I'd rather you guys ask me questions as we go rather than saving them for the end, but that's completely up to you. So what we have up on the screen are some photos that I scanned this past weekend that my mom gave me. Now that they know I have a nice scanner, anytime there's loose family photos floating around, guess where they go? They come back to me. So my mom gave me this bag of images and I took the time to scan them all in last weekend. And there was a variety of things in this bag. Anything from, you can see there's some news clippings up here at the top. There's a letter that has some information about some of the photos in the packet, and a wide variety of things from when my mom was young. And these are my grandmother here. And I believe these are her school pictures. And then a few of those things that have fallen out of family photo albums. So the first thing I want to take a look at here as we go through these is the date. Now you'll notice that they say July 16, 2022. That's not when the pictures were actually captured. That's when I scanned them, and that's when that file was created. So initially, Mylio thinks that these all happened on July 16th. If I were to go over to my calendar view or all photos, and that's in chronological view, they would all show up as being on July 16, 2022, but that's not accurate. So Mylio has some really wonderful tools to help us correct those things. What I'm going to start with is just do a quick Command A, and that's if you are on Mac, that's going to select everything. If you're on Windows, that's going to be a Control A, and that lets me change data for a lot of images at once. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to scroll to the bottom because there's a few images that I've already changed the date on, and I'm going to hold down my Command or Control key and deselect those because I don't want to overwrite the changes that I already made. Now I can go over to the date created, and I'm going to change these down to undated and click Save. And now all of these photos are marked as undated. And when I go over to my calendar view and I scroll up to the very top, you'll see we have this undated category. And that's where all of these pictures that I need to research are located. It gives me a sort of to-do list for things that I want to tackle in the future. Now I'm going to go back over to my folders view, which is what I was looking at previously. And I'm going to scroll up to a photo that is actually one that's really easy to correct. And that's going to be this one right here. Now, when I look at this photo, I know who's in it. I'm pretty lucky in that I know that that's my great-grandparents and my grandmother. And the cool thing about this photo is that there's information about the date right on the border. So whoever created this had this information imprinted on the actual print, and it makes it really easy for me to do some level of correction. So instead of undated, I can click on the date picker here. And what I want to do is take a look at some of my options. Now, Mylio gives you several. You can do a timestamp, which is if you know a specific date and time. A date range lets you pick things like, I know this happened between November 1936 and July 1937. You can put in that type of date range. All day is very similar to timestamp. It just takes that time out of it. So it's just the date. Month and year lets you choose a specific month and year. Season's pretty cool because you can choose a season. So you can look at a photo and go, you know what, that's obviously winter. So depending on what hemisphere you're in, you can tell Mylio what dates your seasons fall in, and then apply those dates as a season and a year. So for me, if I saw something that had a Christmas tree, I can be pretty certain that that was winter of whatever year I think it might have been. You can choose a specific year, a decade, undated as we talked about. But for this image, because I have this 1936 November here on the edge, I'm going to choose month and year. And then I can scroll down to November. And I'm going to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll until I get back to 1936. And there we go. And choose save. And now this has a month and a year applied to it. So it'll show up in the proper place on my calendar. Now, if I go back over here to my calendar view, you'll see here in 1936, I already have another image that I scanned. And that one is of my other grandmother and her brother. So what I can do is, that one was in November, scroll down. There we go, December 1936, or it's showing on November 29th. There we go. And it's showing in the appropriate place on my calendar, which is pretty cool. So that is basics of the date picker and what it does and what it allows you to do as far as your organization. Another thing that I would probably do with this image, and this is a little bit off of our topic for today, but because I know who it is, I can quickly go over here to my face tagging, and I know that is Adolf Kamenzen. You can see I've tagged another photo of him at some point. That's my grandmother. That's Doris Campbell. And that, I don't think I've tagged her yet. Her name is Nina Kamenzen. So there we go. I've tagged and I created that new face tag. And so now Mylio knows who these people are, when this photo was taken. I'm going to probably go out on a limb and say this was captured when they lived in Chicago, but I'm going to have to check with my grandma about that. And the cool thing is because I know when my grandmother was born, she was born in 1927, I can estimate that she was about 9 years old in this photo. And the really awesome thing is my now 95-year-old grandmother can tell me a little bit more about this photo next time I see her. So if you have family members that have those treasure troves of information, take your phone with Mylio, your iPad, and show it to family members that can help fill in some of those gaps. And it'll help you make these memories better preserved and easier to find when you want to get to them later.
Okay. Angela,
yeah,
where would you put notes about that if you got like the location or any more details?
That's a great question. If you know the location, what you can do is go over to the map view. And let's say I know that for sure that this is Chicago. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a search there, pull that up. It'll jump in on Chicago in the map. I don't know exactly where in Chicago. You pull this back to the grid view, and then I can grab that photo and just drag it onto the map for Chicago. Click that, and now that's going to show up in that general vicinity. Now I can talk to my grandma and see if I can find out a little bit more about what neighborhood it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could move that around and make it a little bit more precise. The other thing we could do is go back to our info panel, and we have a title and caption field. Now, title, some people might want to put a specific title in there, but caption is where, especially with scanned family photos, I'm going to put notes about where things happen or any story that goes along with a photo if a family member shares that with me. There's no other great place to put notes, so that's the one that I use. And any of those notes that you enter are searchable via the search tool, and it will recognize the text that you put in there.
Right. So not just keywords are searchable, like captions and everything.
Exactly. So any other questions before I hand the floor over to JC? All right, let me stop sharing. There we go. And it looks like we have another person who showed up. So good to see you. And I want to welcome JC. He's my guest host for today. He is our customer success lead. He's an underwater photographer. He's a truly cool guy, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say about his photos that he's scanned in and how he handles them. So JC, the floor is yours.
All right. So one of my favorite things about Mylio, and one of the things that I tend to show off to people, it's in the calendar view. And I love the calendar view because once you've taken the time to not only date your photos, but to help Mylio understand what photos are important to you, Mylio is going to feature those photos in the calendar for you. So you can see my calendar right now. We're in the present, 2022, 1922, wow, 2022. But what I like is that I can start scrolling back, and Molly is already highlighting things from recent years that were important, like my daughter's graduation and my niece's wedding, my wedding. But I can start going back in time, and not only my digital photos are here, but I've scanned a lot of photos from paper, prints, from negatives. So starting in the late 90s, the photos transitioned from being digital photos into being photos that were scanned. And there's my daughter's birthday in 1995. And I can start going back to my college years. There's my graduation from college, high school graduation. And I can go back through my childhood years and then beyond my childhood to family memories and family events. There's my dad receiving awards from the military, 1964. The only photo I have of my grandma sitting there in a very cool antique car in a beach in Puerto Rico. And then one of my oldest photos, if I scan all the way up, is this photo from 1944, where my mom, right here in front center, is accompanied by 3 of her sisters and their grandma. And that's a precious photo, and I have it forever. It's preserved. Molly is protecting it for me by saving it in multiple places. So this is really kind of super precious and super important to me, but it took a little bit of work to get here, right? Scanning a lot of these photos was fun. It brought back a lot of memories. I actually did it as a family activity. And I know exactly when it happened because I did it during my mom's birthday. So I can go here to the year that we did this, which was 2019. And in May of that year, we were at my mom's apartment, and there was a group of us that were scanning photos together. There's my aunt who recently passed away. There's my sister, my mom, my niece, and I was scanning the photos. They were going through boxes and boxes of photos. And as we were scanning those photos, they were being saved into Mylio on my laptop. And then on the other side of the room, my brother-in-law had an iPad and he was tagging faces. So we had my mom and my aunt there telling us who the faces were. So this was kind of like happening in real time. And of course, my aunt had her glass of wine with her, which is what kept her alive for 91 years. But it was a really unique family event. But I scanned so many photos that day, thousands of them. We couldn't possibly have dated them all. So the most important thing that I did and continue to do with scanned photos is what Angela showed you earlier on, which is take the photo and mark it undated if you don't know the date of the photo. And the reason that's so important is because it automatically creates a little to-do bucket for you. If I scan all the way to the top of my calendar here, I'm going to grab the little flag here so I can move fast. I'm going to go all the way to the top, and you'll notice that at the top of the calendar, Mylio groups all the photos that are undated for me. And I can click on that group, and every photo that doesn't have a date or video, it's there and present for me. So now I can go about the task of dating these photos very, very easily. Now that undated mark works not only in calendar view, but in other views as well. I can go to the people view and I can find a bucket of photos for my daughter. Scroll down to the letter M here. I have a lot of people in my people view. But when I find Madeline, and let's make sure I'm sorted by date created here, you'll notice that the very first few photos are undated. So there's photos of her at all ages. But then once we start getting into the photos that are actually dated, which I think start around here, I can kind of see my daughter growing up again. And it goes from a baby to a toddler. I think actually that's the first photo that for which I actually have a date. And that's me holding her just a few days after we came back from the hospital. Long story but they were in the hospital for over a week. But we finally got home, and that's one of the first photos I have of me holding my daughter just a little over a week after she was born. From that point forward, the photos are in order, right? So I can see my daughter kind of growing up in real time. I can scroll through these photos, and because all these photos are dated correctly, I can keep going and going and going. And I can go all the way down to present time to the amazing young woman that she's become and see her in all her beauty and goofiness. And in a couple of months, we're going to be adding her wedding photos here to the end of this group. So it's really cool, but I have a group of photos at the very top that I need to date so that they kind of fit into the story properly. And I'm going to do a few of these photos today. So this, obviously, right here was all done at the same time. And I remember when this happened, we were doing gingerbread during a Christmas celebration. So I know exactly, or pretty exactly when this was. It was in 2007, and it was at Christmas time. It was in December. It wasn't Christmas Day. It was a few days before. So I'm going to use the same thing that Angela did before. I'm going to select all these photos that were obviously all taken on the same day. They all show up as undated, but now I'm going to go here, select month and year, and I'm going to say this was all done in December of 2007. Oh, too far. And there it is. Click save. And now those photos have moved into the right place in the timeline of my daughter kind of growing up. Then I can go back to the top and I can continue working that way with other undated photos. So that's two ways in which you can use that undated label and help you kind of little by little correct these dates and get them all done. The other thing that I do with my photos to get them organized is I put all of my scanned photos in one folder. So I have one top level folder here where all my scans go. And then they're kind of roughly organized together: Seattle, Puerto Rico, early years, high school years. But every one of these groups or every one of these buckets also has the undated photos at the top. And then as we go past, some of the photos have been correctly dated again. So you can have one big group of undated photos in your calendar view, like I showed you earlier. So if I go here, I have every undated photo. Or you can go by person, or you can go by folder. You can even create some albums. You could select all your undated photos, collect them all and add them to an album, and then work on them a little bit at a time. So that's how I've been doing it. And I still have 1,600 photos to put correct dates on, but it's a lot fewer than when I started. And you can kind of see that calendar view coming into play correctly. Another thing that you can do in the calendar is sometimes you can very quickly see that some photos have the incorrect date. That's a photo that I took in Bainbridge not that long ago. So somehow this photo ended up with an incorrect date. It happens. Sometimes files get corrupted. Sometimes you touch them with another application and don't realize that the metadata has changed. So I'm gonna make that photo undated and save it so that the correct photo now is highlighted on that year of my mom and dad's wedding, instead of having that photo that was from modern times but had the wrong date on it. All right, so let's open it up to questions.
Well, so one thing I was wondering, and that I know, but would love if you would share, when
Yeah.
you're looking at these things in the grid view, there's a little icon in the bottom right when you've adjusted those dates. So if you go ahead and click into any folder or all photos, there's an icon.
Yeah, you can see it very well when I go to this folder here. There's that little, it's called an annotation.
Yes.
So annotations are little bits of information that can be graphically presented on your photos when you're in grid view. You can show your color ratings, your labels, your star ratings. You can show titles and captions. You can show a date for a photo if a date exists. Notice these are undated, so the date's not showing. But you can also do this one icon here called fuzzy date. And that's what this little circle with the little waves in there means. And a fuzzy date is anything that is not precise. So if you know the time and date that the photo was taken, and most digital photos are going to have that information correctly, that icon's not going to show up in that photo. So if I go to my modern photos, you'll notice a lot of these photos don't have that icon showing. Well, that one does, but most of them do not, because they were digital photos and the precise date was captured correctly. But for these photos in this album that all came from negatives, the little fuzzy date is showing up. So fuzzy date is going to be anything like if you just put the month and the year, that's a fuzzy date because it was sometime in that month. Or if you put a date range or a season as your choices, that's what that little icon does. And it's really helpful when you are looking through your photos, especially if you have the date annotation turned off. Because you can find photos that don't have a precise date on them very, very easily. So that's what those are. Very helpful.
Awesome. And I'm glad you showed where you can turn those on and off. So if they're helpful to you, have them on. If you find them to be cluttering up your screen, you can always turn them off and turn it back on later when you're ready to work and you want to see a visual representation of which ones need attention. So that's great. Are there any questions for us? We can go ahead and open up the floor. And if you have questions outside of using the date picker, those are okay too. This is kind of our Ask Me Anything section. So anything Mylio related, photography related, we will do our best to answer those for you. So feel free to unmute and ask or put them into the chat and we will help you out with those.
JC, I noticed that on your folder view that you have a list at the bottom of each folder, kind of giving a list of what's in that folder. No, keep going.
So
no, it had colored dots beside it.
Oh, that's in the calendar view.
Oh, sorry, calendar view, is it?
Yeah, the calendar view will show you events. So are you talking about these dots right here? Yes,
that view.
Yeah, this is the calendar view. And in calendar view, you can have what we call an event. And events, there's different ways of generating events, but an event it's just that, it's an event. Like here, I can click on the event called Madeline Danskin Triathlon. That was my daughter's first triathlon. I can just click on that event and Mylio automatically takes me to all the photos that were part of that event. I can likewise go to like my niece's wedding here, Alex and Manu wedding. Alexandra and Manuel is their name, but we call them Al and Manu. And when I click on that, it's every photo of the wedding that's all part of that event. And notice I highlighted that with a certain priority as event of the month. And that's events is one of the ways in which Mylio knows what photos to highlight. You'll notice for 2022, I had a trip to Puerto Rico, and what Mylio is highlighting is the cover photo for that event, which is of this pelicans, brown pelicans swimming on the beach, or not swimming on the beach, flying on the beach. Although they were swimming at times and fishing. It was a really interesting, I spent half a day looking at them and taking photos. But that's what those are. And you can create them in a variety of ways. You can click the plus sign here on the information panel to create an event. And you can just give a time of the event. Just like you date a specific photo, you can date an event. You can put a date range. You can say a day, a month, a year, or a season for that event. You can do a title and a description, and then assign categories for events. You'll notice that a lot of my events have red dots. That's my travel category. So anything that's a trip shows up with a red dot. You can also create events via a folder. I can turn an entire folder into an event. If you look here at 2016, I have Puerto Rico, Alaska, Ireland, Monaco, and Iceland. I did a lot of travel that year. All of those events actually started from a folder. So if I go to my folder view, I go into Mylio Photos, one of my main folders is this trips folder. I have 54 different folders in here. And the events that you're seeing in my calendar for 2016, like Monaco, are just folders that I told Mylio to show as a calendar event. So what Mylio does is it looks at the dates, like for the Puerto Rico this year, the oldest photo there is January 21st. The newest photo is January 30th. So that's the range of the event now. When I show that event as a calendar event and I turn on that switch, that event then shows up in the calendar accordingly. And when I click on any one of these events, Mylio is going to show me all the photos that correspond, in this case, to that trip. So that's what those are. And they're really cool ways of finding photos very, very quickly.
They're very helpful. If you would like to learn more about events, I put a link to the chapter in the manual all about how to create and view and edit events.
Yeah. If you're a more organized person than I am, and you keep a precise calendar of what you do, you can link that calendar to Mylio. So like I know some Mylio users that have all of their kids' sporting events in one calendar, right? So they link that calendar to Mylio, and Mylio automatically creates the events and links the photos that correspond with the calendar event time. So any photos that were taken during the same time just show up to that event.
Very nice.
Very nice.
So we have a question here from Mustafa. Would like to know what scanner, make, and model would you recommend? So I've been using the Epson Fast Photo 680. It's a sheet feed scanner, and it does amazing things. It's super fast. You can load up to, I believe, there you go. JC's got one right there. A stack of photos up to, I think, what, an 8x10. And it feeds them through, it pulls them from the back. So unlike a lot of scanners that pull from the top, they pull from the back so it doesn't damage the photo. It's super fast, and you can set it to bring photos in at a really nice high DPI, high resolution.
Yeah.
So you get an archival quality scan. Now, it doesn't work for things that are damaged. So if you have photos that maybe have tears, or maybe they have some form of adhesive on the back, things like that, you don't want to put those through a sheet feed scanner. That's where you want to go with a flatbed.
Right.
There are specific flatbed scanners out there that are really great, but I've just been using my multifunction printer that I have here at home. It's an HP 8620, I think. And it's got, the printer scanner copier type thing going on. And I just make sure I download the drivers and tell it to scan a TIFF at least 600 DPI. And that gives me a good archival quality scan that I can do just about anything I need to do with it. Do you have any other recommendations, JC?
Well, just a little bit more on the fast photo scan, because there's a lot of advantages to that scan. One is that you can put entire stacks of photos as long as they're the same size. So if you have a bunch of photos that are all 4x3, for example, you can put up to 36 photos at a time, and the scanner will scan them all. You don't have to continue doing the work one photo at a time. That can save a lot of time. The other thing that's really smart about that scanner, it sounds like an Epson advertisement now, is that it will scan the back of the photo if that photo happens to have any writing in them. And I can show you an example of what that looks like. I think I saw one on one of your photos also, Angela.
Yep, I have them as well.
But here's some.
Oh, you got one? Okay.
Yeah, so this had January 2000 as the date, but notice the name of the photo is 24B, and 24A is right next to it. So I can easily tell when that photo was taken and correct the date on it based on the writing from the photo, because the scanner picked that up. So
Yeah, that's one of the coolest features of that. So if you have handwritten notes and you don't have time to grab them at the time that you're scanning, having those become part of your Mylio library is very helpful, and they're stacked right there next to your original images. Yeah. Another cool thing that the Fast Photo does, and it's something that you might have seen in mine, that I had a couple of different versions of my scan photos, is it does a scan of what the picture looks like, and it also does an enhancement. So you can have it have the enhanced version right next to the original scan. Yeah. So that way you can choose which one you like. So here's this image here that we were looking at. Let me go ahead and go back up a level here. And because I changed the date on this one, it's no longer next to the original. Or so actually, I take that back. This was the original. And then, come on. This was the enhanced one. Let me take the face tagging off. And then we can see the same thing here with a couple of other ones. I believe these were also my grandmother. I don't have any date information on this. I'm going to guess she was probably around 4 or 5 years old. So here's the unenhanced version straight out of the scanner, and it's a 600 DPI TIFF. So it's very high quality, but then it also makes this enhanced version. I can choose which one I want to keep or keep both. Another thing, as you're scanning in family documents, you'll notice I scanned in a couple of news clippings that were in that bag of images that I had. You can do that. That's something that I would do on a flatbed scanner. This wouldn't go through because it's so thin and a little bit fragile. It wouldn't go very well through the sheet feeder. So a flatbed is where that really comes in handy. And then I was also able to scan in this document, which is actually not that long ago, an email that my grandma had printed out between her and her cousin who lives in Switzerland. So getting more information about the family. So I can go through, this is all searchable because of Mylio's text recognition, the optical character recognition search, but I can also reference this as I go through and pay attention to these images and get more information about my family and my genealogy and all of that. So different things that you can scan in Mylio is not just limited to photographs. I also found these pencil sketches in that same folder of images, which are really cool, right? I'm guessing this is Gearsaw. This is in Switzerland. Yeah, it says Gearsaw right there.
That's as good as a photo.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
But I recognize the church. I've been there many, many years ago, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Gearsaw. And then I saw that it had writing on it. So lots of different things you can do with scanned family photos, in addition to bringing in all of your current photos from your cell phones, from your big cameras, and being able to see everything all in one place. And I think that's, for me, the supreme power of Mylio Photos, is being able to get it all into one place and get it organized.
Now, one of the things that I did when I started this journey of getting all of my photos into Mylio, because you really can feel the power of the application when your entire life is with you in your pocket in a visual way, right? But one of the ways in which I was able to get so many photos done is I use a service. I scan a lot of the photos myself, both with a fast photo where I could do stacks and with a flatbed scanner. But there were some photos that were really fragile, or there were just a lot of them. So I use a service called Legacy Box, but there's a number of them. Scan Cafe is another popular one. And these services will send you an empty box and a bunch of barcodes. And you put your photos in Ziploc bags in groups of 15, I think. Every service is a little different. But you put all those photos in the box, you send it to them. They go through the process of scanning them, and then they send that back to you with a USB thumb drive. You plug that thumb drive into your computer and bring all the photos into Mylio and start correcting them. So don't be afraid to ask for help, is the lesson.
Definitely. Yeah, we did that with family videos, actually. I think there was Legacy Box, and there's one other company we were considering. I don't remember which one my dad chose to go with. But we had all of these, 8mm phones and things that we don't have the equipment to play these videos on. Right. And we got them all converted to digital. So those are some pretty cool family gems. I still need to bring those into Mylio because I have notes actually on when and who was in them too. So.
No, I did the same thing. I had a lot of videos, including my daughter's birth. And let me share my screen again. But I used to be a news photographer. I used to work for a television station, and the day that my daughter was born, the TV station sent a crew to the hospital and they recorded the birth or not the birth, thank God. They recorded the event for us. And I had the tape forever, but it was in a professional Betacam format. So I had to find a service that could convert that video. And now it's in my Mylio library. So I can pull this up on my phone. I'm going to be doing this during my daughter's wedding in a couple of months and embarrassing her a lot. I'm going to be showing every guest the video of her from birth. So.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And I had hair back then. And so did she. She had a lot of hair.
Yeah, she did. That's awesome. It's just really neat to me how we're able to bring everything in and enjoy it with Mylio. So are there any other questions before we wrap up for the day? We've covered a lot of information, mostly targeted on scanning photos and changing dates and how to get those things better organized. You're welcome to ask questions on that topic or any other Mylio photography related topic. And if you have any particular challenges or questions you'd like to see addressed on future coffee breaks, please don't hesitate to let us know here, comment on one of the events in the community. We're always happy and looking forward to new topics that you want to learn more about. I did note down the question about events. So I think there's going to be a topic surrounding events and creating events here in the not too distant future. So hopefully, Fran, you can join us for that one as well. But otherwise, if there's no other questions, we'll wrap up for today. And I want to thank you guys all for
Angela,
coming.
can I share one more thing?
Of course.
Because I'm really lazy. I don't like to do extra work. And one of the things that I want people to think about when they embark in a big scanning project is that they can link their folder where their photos are being scanned directly to Mylio. And those photos will start appearing automatically. And that's how I did everything. So whatever you're setting your scanner, whatever folder you're sending the photos from the scanner to, link that photo into Mylio. And every time you scan a photo, that photo will show up in Mylio in all of your devices. So you can, put 36 photos into your fast photo scanner, let it start scanning, and then you can go sit in the hammock with your iPad outside. And as the photos come in, you can start working on them. So anyway,
that is a great tip. I'm going to quickly post a link to adding images without moving them. This is how you add a linked folder in Mylio. That's the user manual link there in the chat. So if you want to grab that, it will show you how to add a linked folder. And what I've done is whatever default folder my scanner creates in my pictures folder, I've linked that. And then those pictures just start coming into Mylio. It's pretty cool. And then you can move them around and organize them if you like, but totally up to you. So any other questions or comments?
I do have one question, which may be beyond this, but I recently bought a desktop computer that has 2 hard drives in it. And I decided to have a vault on that desktop, but it didn't give me a choice of which of the hard disks to put it on. It automatically went to drive C when I wanted to put it on drive D. Is there a way to change that?
Yes.
Jason, would you like to go ahead and let her know?
Yeah, it's actually really easy. What you do is you quit Mylio, and then you go to your in Windows Explorer, you go to your C drive, and in your user directory, I'm going to assume that your user is named Fran. So you'll go to users, Fran, and there'll be a folder there called Mylio. You grab that Mylio folder, you drag it to your D drive, whatever you want it to, and then you relaunch Mylio. When you relaunch Mylio, Mylio is going to say, hey, where'd my Mylio folder go? And you're going to say, I moved it over here. So it'll give you the option to relocate that folder to show it where it went. And from that point on, it'll be on the D drive. Then you can switch your desktop computer to be a vault, because obviously you probably have a lot more storage on the D drive. So
thanks. That'll help.
And I put the directions for that into the chat as well, Fran.
Okay, thanks.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope it was informative and enjoyable for you. We'll be having our next coffee break next week, so make sure you keep an eye on the events page in the community. We are going to be changing around the dates and times. to try to accommodate people in different parts of the world and different schedules. If there is a time zone that works really well for you, or a time that you think you'd like to see a coffee break, let me know and I will see if I can work it into my schedule and schedule one just for you. So with that, have a wonderful day and we'll see you next time.